So today I'm gonna be doing my October wrap-up. October was not that great of a reading month, but all of the books I read were graphic novels, and I read one anthology, so I was in such a graphic novel kick this month. Also managed to watch 6 movies and 4 TV shows, so let's get started. The first book I read in October was Montress by Major Lee Liu, and I forget what the artist's name is. This is a very popular graphic novel. I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. I was super excited to read this graphic novel because I've heard so many good things about it and it sounded really good, and I'm sad to say that I absolutely hated it. I gave it 2 stars. Honestly, like, it was really violent and gory. If you're squeamish about blood and gore, do not read this graphic novel. Trust me, it was really bad. And the art style was so detailed, so every time there was like a violent scene, it was really, really detailed and like all the violence, and it just made me so uncomfortable. And honestly, the story itself was not that great. The plot was all over the place. The world building was never really explained. It's a fantasy graphic novel, but the world building was not explained at all. I honestly had no idea what the heck was going on. I will not be continuing this series. The first book was not good. Fortunately, this book was a disappointment, but I did read some pretty great books this month. So next I read the Don't Call Me Crazy anthology, 33 Voices Start the Conversation on Mental Illness. I'm interested in this anthology because so many YA authors have stories in this anthology. Adam Silvera, Victoria Schwab, Libba Bray. Not only did YA authors have stories in this, but also there was athletes, actors, there was even a war veteran who wrote a story about PTSD. Contributors to this anthology was really varied and I really enjoyed it. This anthology was one of the best anthologies I've ever read. Usually when I read anthologies, there's always like 1 or 2 stories I don't really like, and I just kind of have to force myself to get through them. But with this anthology, I loved every single essay / story. Okay, so this is these are like personal essays. It's not like a short stories or anything like that. Each contributor contributed like a personal essay about their journey and story with mental illness. Every story was just written so well and was so fascinating and captivating. I was so invested in this book from start to finish, and I absolutely loved every single essay. There was not one essay that I was like, it was okay. No, every single essay was so powerful and moving and wonderful. I gave it 5 stars. It was incredible, and if you have any interest in this anthology at all, go for it because it was amazing and you will not be disappointed. Next, I read Ms.Marvel Volume 5. So I've been making my way through the Ms.Marvel comics this year. I think I read Volume 1 in January or February, I don't quite remember. And this is the very first comic book series that I've ever read, and I've been enjoying myself so much. Each edition has been getting so much better. Ms.Marvel, she goes to high school. She's 17. She has, you know, your typical high school problems. She has a crush and she has problems with her friends. But then at night, she's a superhero and she kicks ass and she does amazing things and she's part of the Avengers. I just love this series so much. It makes me so happy. I love how Tony Stark is in this one, and he's just like, he's such a dad in this book. I guess he's just like a dad to like all the baby Avengers. Loki shows up in this, and there's like a really funny scene with Loki where they try to summon him with like your traditional, like the way you would summon a demon with candles and a pentagram, and it's just so funny. I just love this comic book series. It's so amazing. Last but not least, I read Jane. Yes, this is a Jane Eyre retelling graphic novel, okay? Are you surprised? I know I'm not. I saw this in my local library, and yes, it's a modern Jane Eyre retelling, and I really liked the art style. It's really cool. I really like it. And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just read it because it's Jane Eyre and I'm trash for everything Jane Eyre. So I read it and I really loved it. I love how this is a modern retelling, and Jane Eyre is like an art student at NYU. It takes place in New York, and Rochester is the CEO of a hedge fund. I love how in this one, the villain is different than in Jane Eyre. Bertha is not the villain. This is not a spoiler. You find out that pretty early on. She's actually painted as the victim in this story, and she's not the villain at all. And most of the book follows the Jane Eyre storyline, but the ending kind of is different from the original Jane Eyre. Like, the fire happens and everything that that happens in the original Jane Eyre, but the reason for the fire is different. Now, this book was pretty similar to the original Jane Eyre, but the authors really took their own personal spin to the story, and I really loved it because I was really shocked once I got to the end of the book and the whole plot unfolded, and the villain was different and some of the plot points were different. I also really enjoyed the parts that were very much like Jane Eyre, which is her being an art student and taking care of Adele and falling in love with Rochester, but him being like really weird and elusive. I really enjoyed this. I finished it in one sitting. It was so good. I could not put it down. If you're a Jane Eyre fan, you definitely should check this one out. Now we're gonna move on to movies. So I watched 6 or 7 movies. That's a lot of movies this month, so I'm not gonna go through all of them. I'm just gonna go through the ones I enjoyed the most. So let's start. So the first one I watched was Blockers. I didn't get to see this in the movie theater, and I wasn't sure what to expect with this movie. Honestly, like, the trailer made it look kind of ridiculous. I'm not really sure if I would like it, but Ike Barinholtz from The Mindy Project is in it, John Cena is in it, Leslie Mann is in it. You know what? Why not? Let's give it a shot. And honestly, like, I really loved Blockers. Like, it was really funny and entertaining, and it exceeded my expectations of this movie. Honestly, like, I had pretty low expectations going in. Yes, it's not a groundbreaking movie. It's not like one of the best movies of all time, but I was very entertained while watching this, so I say it was a pretty great movie. I watched the new Star is Born movie with Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper. Now, I have a lot of mixed feelings about this movie. I'm really pissed off that there was no trigger warnings for this movie because there's a lot of heavy topics in this movie. It deals with suicide, alcoholism, addiction, rehab. Like, there's so many tough things in this movie, and there was no trigger warnings at all. That really pissed me off. I wish I had known how much of a tragedy this movie really was going into it, because it really affected me, and not in a good way. Love the music. I think it was really beautiful, and Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga did a great job acting. I feel like there was parts of this movie that were kind of sexist. I'm gonna spoil it, but there's just some parts in the beginning of when they first start dating where Bradley Cooper acts kind of like, I don't know, stalkerish, and that just made me uncomfortable. I don't really find out that much about Allie. The whole movie is kind of based on Jackson. Like, we hear so much about Jackson, his childhood and his family and his issues, and we learn so much about Jackson, but we don't even know Allie's last name. Almost just exists in the movie as the person who likes Jackson, basically, and who has a good voice. I did really like this movie, but it has a lot of issues, and so I don't really know how I feel about it as a whole. Next, I rewatched The Greatest Showman. So I watched this movie when it first came out in the theaters, and I loved it so much. I am a huge musical theater fan. Musical theater is like, I love it. For me, a movie to be my favorite movie of all time, it has to be a musical. It cannot not be a musical, because that's just how much I love musicals of The Greatest Showman. It's honestly like one of my favorite musicals. I love the music. Even a year later, I'm still singing the music all the time. Rewrite the Stars is one of my favorite songs ever. I'm always singing it. I will say, I do know that the movie is kind of romanticizing of P.T. Barnum. Like, he was not a good person. He did a lot of really crappy things. Look past the fact that it's very much fictional story. This movie is so well done. The music is amazing. The choreography is amazing. The costumes are great. The message is beautiful. I just love everything about this movie, and rewatching it was so wonderful. I watched Home Again with Reese Witherspoon. So I didn't really know much about this movie. I just saw that Reese Witherspoon was in it, and it was a romantic comedy, so I was like, cool, I'm gonna watch it. She's recently divorced by her husband, and she's living with her 2 daughters in LA alone for the very first time, starting this like new life in LA. And on her birthday, her and her friends go and like drink at the bar, and they meet these 3 guys that are like in their 20s. Her mom offers them a place to stay in their guest house. The whole movie is just about 3 guys that are living in the guest house with Reese Witherspoon and her 2 daughters. I love how the guys just started to become part of the family. Like, she starts being in a relationship with one of them, and one of the other guys becomes like her tech support guy. He helps her with everything when she has a problem. The other guy like starts bonding with one of her daughters, and they become like best friends. I love how Reese Witherspoon is like an older woman and she's with a younger guy, and usually it's always the opposite. It's always the older guy with the younger woman, and I really loved how this one just did the opposite of it. It was a romantic comedy, but it was so unique and modern, and I really enjoyed every single second of it. It was really funny, it was really heartwarming. If you're a fan of Reese Witherspoon and romantic comedies, you definitely should check this one out. It will definitely surprise you. Last but not least, West Side Story! So I'm a huge theater fan, I mentioned that before, and I've never seen West Side Story, and I just felt like a fake fan. Like, how can you not watch West Side Story? It's iconic. I'm obsessed. I love all the songs. I love the choreography. Honestly, I don't know what I love more about the movie, the songs or the choreography. Like, both of them are amazing. Obviously, it's a Romeo and Juliet story, so the ending I'm not a fan of. If we can just ignore that, the rest of the movie is amazing. My only problems with it, kind of annoying, the fact that they just cast like a bunch of white people to play like the Puerto Rican characters, and they did this like really weird accent that was supposed to be Spanish, but it just sounded weird. I know they're remaking West Side Story, so I really hope they fix some of the racism. Tonight, it all began tonight. I saw you and the world went away. I love that song so much, and I also love Maria. The overture of the musical is so beautiful. So happy I finally watched it. Now I can finally say I've watched West Side Story, and it's just as amazing, and everybody says it is. Let's talk about TV shows. So I watched quite a few TV shows in October. I'm gonna go into depth to all of them because I've mentioned some of them in the past. You know, I haven't watched that many TV shows, honestly. Like, I pretty much consistently watch like a couple TV shows. Fresh Off the Boat started off again in, I think, the end of September. I've been watching that every week, and it's been really fun. Supergirl started up again, season 4, and I've also been watching that every week. It's been really fun. Doctor Who started up again, and I actually have not seen the new Doctor, so no spoilers. I started rewatching all of David Tennant's episodes, and David Tennant is my favorite Doctor, and it was just so wonderful watching his episodes again. I forgot how magical it is to watch Doctor Who, especially when David Tennant was on. And I did start watching some of Matt's episodes, but then I stopped to binge watch another show. Charmed! They rebooted Charmed. I'm a huge fan of the original Charmed. It was the show that I grew up on. I was really little when it first started, and I watched it all throughout my childhood. I was really nervous about the reboot of Charmed. Of course, I was gonna support it anyway, and I'm really loving it. I've been watching it every week. They've done such a great job. Obviously, it's not as good as the original. Nothing is ever as good as the original. Because the new Charmed started up again, I got inspired to rewatch the original show. It's been so amazing rewatching Charmed. Great thing about watching it later, there's so many cameos of actors in Charmed that now are like really popular, but when Charmed was on, nobody knew who they were. Like Misha Collins, really young Misha Collins was on Charmed. Almost didn't even recognize him. Ashley Tisdale was on Charmed. John Cho was on Charmed. Amy Adams was on Charmed. So many cameos in Charmed that I'm just shocked at how many people were on Charmed. That's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed. Comment down below your favorite things that you read/watched in October. Also, has anybody been watching the reboot of Charmed? Can we please talk? Because nobody is yelling about it, and it's so good. Also, has anybody watched the original Charmed? Because it's amazing. I have no one to talk about it with. Social media links are all down below. My Twitter, my Bookstagram, my Goodreads. Arrivederci!